They called her a thief covered in blood, until the lonely rancher said she was my daughter's midwife. Before we dive into this riveting tale from the Old West, I want to thank you for joining me today. If you enjoy stories of misunderstandings, redemption, and frontier justice, make sure to subscribe to our channel right now, and don't forget to comment below telling us where you're listening from. Whether you're in bustling New York, the rolling hills of Texas, or somewhere across the globe, I want to hear from you. Now, settle in as we journey back to a time when justice was swift, mercy was rare, and a woman's reputation could hang by the thinnest thread. The first rays of sunlight pierced the dusty horizon of Copper Creek, a modest settlement in the Arizona Territory, 1878. The town was just beginning to stir when a woman stumbled into the main street, her dress caked with dried blood. Sarah Blackwood's appearance caused immediate commotion. Her dark hair had come loose, framing a face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. The blood, so much blood, covered her hands and dress, but it was the small leather satchel clutched tightly against her chest that drew the sharpest glances. "Thief!" The accusation rang out clear as a church bell. Sheriff Miller emerged from the jailhouse, one hand resting on his holster. "What's all this commotion?" "That woman," spat Elijah Turner, owner of the general store, "was seen leaving the Harper homestead before dawn. Look at her, covered in blood and carrying stolen goods." Sarah's face remained impassive, her eyes fixed on some distant point. The whispers grew around her. "The Harpers live alone. Since Mr. Harper passed, that poor widow and her daughter always knew there was something not right about that Blackwood woman." Sheriff Miller raised a hand. "Mrs. Blackwood, you want to explain yourself?" "I need to speak with Dr. Wilson. It's urgent," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite her haggard appearance. "You'll be speaking to me first," Miller replied, reaching for the satchel. "Hand that over." Sarah stepped back. "And they can't." That was all the confirmation the crowd needed. Accusations flew like bullets. Before Sarah could respond, the crowd parted. A man on horseback approached. Jacob Reed, owner of the Sleeping R Ranch, was not a man who came to town often. His solitary nature and the tragic loss of his wife had turned him into something of a legend, the lonely rancher who spoke more to his cattle than to people. He dismounted with fluid grace. His presence commanded immediate attention through the quiet authority he carried. "Sheriff," Reed nodded, his voice gruff from disuse, "there seems to be a misunderstanding." Miller's eyebrows rose. "You know something about this, Reed?" Jacob Reed's eyes, the color of a storm-filled sky, met Sarah's briefly before he turned back to the sheriff. "She was my daughter's midwife." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of confusion through the onlookers. "Your daughter?" Sheriff Miller's confusion was evident. Few knew Reed had a daughter. Fewer still had ever seen her. "Emma," Reed confirmed. "Married last year. Her husband's away. Baby came early. Mrs. Blackwood was summoned in the night." Elijah Turner wasn't satisfied. That doesn't explain why she was at the Harper place, or all that blood." For the first time, emotion crossed Sarah's exhausted face. "I wasn't at the Harper homestead. I came directly from the Sleeping R." Before she could answer further, Dr. Wilson pushed through the crowd. "Sarah, I got your message." "Message?" Miller interrupted. "Yes. A ranch hand came at first light. Said Mrs. Blackwood needed medical supplies urgently." Jacob Reed's voice carried concern. "My daughter's having a difficult time, the baby too. Mrs. Blackwood has been tending to them since midnight." Understanding dawned on Sheriff Miller's face. The blood, the urgent errand, it aligned with a difficult birth, not a theft. Sarah spoke softly. "I need to return immediately. Every minute matters." The doctor stepped forward. "I've prepared everything you requested, and I'll come with you." The tension dissolved like morning mist. The sheriff stepped back, embarrassment replacing suspicion. Turner wasn't ready to concede. Then why all the secrecy? Sarah's gaze was steady. A woman's birthing is her private business, Mr. Turner, not something to be announced in the street. Jacob Reed moved to his horse, then paused beside Sarah. Though he spoke quietly, his words carried, "My daughter asked for you specifically, said there's no one else she'd trust with her firstborn." As Sarah and Dr. Wilson mounted horses, the crowd dispersed. But Elijah Turner's narrowed eyes followed them, his suspicions merely diverted, not dispelled. What none of them knew was that Sarah Blackwood carried more than medical supplies in her satchel, and the truth, like the blood on her dress, would not wash away easily. The ride to the Sleeping R Ranch stretched before them in tense silence. Sarah rode with back straight despite exhaustion, the leather satchel now secured to her saddle. Jacob Reed led the way, his broad shoulders set in a rigid line that spoke of sleepless nights. When they crested the final hill, the Sleeping R spread before them, a modest main house with outbuildings and corrals. In the distance, cattle grazed on what little grass the unforgiving land provided. A young man burst through the door as they approached. "Mr. Reed, she's asking for Mrs. Blackwood, says she won't make it much longer." Sarah dismounted before her horse fully stopped, grabbing her satchel in one fluid motion. "How long between pains, Thomas?" "Almost no time, ma'am. Miss Emma says the baby's trying to come sideways." Inside, Emma Reed Matthews lay on a bed, her young face contorted in pain, golden hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. At 20, she was experiencing the harsh reality that women on the frontier faced too often. Childbirth could be a death sentence, far from proper medical care. "Sarah," Emma gasped, reaching out, "you came back." "Of course I did," Sarah replied, her professional demeanor softening. "And I brought Dr. Wilson." Outside the bedroom, Jacob Reed paced like a caged wolf, each cry from his daughter cutting him deeply. Dr. Wilson emerged briefly to request hot water and clean linens. "Reed," the doctor said quietly, "this could be a long process." Inside the bedroom, Sarah opened her satchel. Dr. Wilson watched as she removed not only the medical supplies he'd provided, but also a small wooden box, intricately carved. "What's that?" he asked, preparing a solution for Emma's pain. Sarah hesitated. "Something that might help. My grandmother was a healer. Some of her remedies work better than others." The doctor frowned. "Mrs. Blackwood, I can't condone." "It's just raspberry leaf and black cohosh," Sarah interrupted, "to strengthen the contractions. Nothing that would harm mother or child." Dr. Wilson nodded curtly. "The baby needs to turn if it's to have any chance." For the next 2 hours, the bedroom became a battlefield where life and death waged their ancient war. Emma's strength waned with each contraction. Sarah worked tirelessly, her hands moving with the confidence of someone who had walked this path many times before. Outside, Jacob Reed had moved to the porch, unwilling to stray too far from his daughter. When Dr. Wilson emerged, wiping his brow, Reed stood quickly. "Emma?" The single word contained a lifetime of questions. "Still fighting," the doctor replied. "Mrs. Blackwood is remarkably skilled, but I won't lie to you. It's not looking good." Inside the bedroom, Sarah sat beside Emma, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Your baby's turn now, but you need to find your strength for this final push." Emma nodded weakly. "Sarah, if I don't make it—" "Don't," Sarah cut her off gently. "You're going to meet your child today. Both of you will survive this." "How can you be so sure?" Sarah's hand moved to the leather satchel. "Because I promised your father, and I'm not in the habit of breaking promises." What Sarah didn't say was that beneath the medical supplies lay something wrapped in oilskin, something that had nothing to do with midwifery and everything to do with why people like Turner were so quick to call her thief. A sudden cry from Emma snapped Sarah back. "Dr. Wilson, it's time!" The next moments blurred into urgent activity, and finally, miraculously, the angry wail of a newborn filled the room. "A boy," Dr. Wilson announced, something like wonder in his voice. Sarah worked quickly to tend to Emma, whose exhausted face now shone with joy. "Let me see him." "You should tell your father," Sarah suggested softly once Emma held her son. "He's been wearing a hole in the porch boards." Emma smiled weakly. "Would you get him? He respects you, Sarah, more than he lets on." The request surprised Sarah, but she nodded and stepped outside. Jacob Reed stood at the porch railing, his knuckles white with tension. "You have a grandson, Mr. Reed. Mother and child are both doing well." The transformation that came over the man's face was remarkable. The stern lines softened, the worried eyes brightened, and Jacob Reed looked years younger. "A boy," he repeated. "Emma is truly all right. See for yourself." Sarah stepped aside. As Reed moved past her, he paused. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. "Thank you," he said simply, the words carrying more weight than their brevity suggested. Sarah nodded, watching as he entered to meet his grandson. She sank into a chair, suddenly aware of her bone-deep exhaustion. The leather satchel sat beside her, its presence a reminder of unfinished business. From where she sat, Sarah could see the road back to Copper Creek. Soon she would have to return and face the whispers, the suspicions that had followed her since her arrival 3 years ago. And she would have to decide what to do about the contents of her satchel, the real reason she'd been reluctant to let Sheriff Miller examine it, because beneath the medical supplies lay a deed to land that had never rightfully belonged to the Harper family, despite what everyone in Copper Creek believed. A deed that, if revealed, would change everything. By the time Sarah returned to Copper Creek 3 days later, the story of Emma's difficult delivery had spread through town. The blood on her dress was explained, her urgent manner justified. But Elijah Turner's suspicions weren't easily dispelled. He watched from his store as Sarah made her way to her small cabin at the edge of town, the leather satchel still in her possession. "Strange, isn't it?" he remarked to Chester Hamilton, the bank manager. "Woman appears covered in blood, refuses to explain herself. Then Reed, of all people, comes to her defense." Inside her cabin, Sarah finally rested. The satchel sat on her table, a reminder of decisions that could no longer be postponed. Sarah moved to the window, drawing the curtains before unbuttoning her high-necked blouse. In privacy, she revealed what no one in Copper Creek had seen, a thin silver chain from which hung a small key. With practiced fingers, she removed it and approached the satchel. Inside, beneath a false bottom cleverly sewn into the lining, lay an oilskin package. Sarah unwrapped it carefully, revealing yellowed papers and a small leather-bound journal. The deed was on top, its official seal still intact. "The Blackwood claim," she whispered, running a finger over the faded ink that spelled out her family name. The land that now comprised most of Copper Creek and the surrounding ranches, including the Harper homestead, had once belonged to her grandfather, Jonathan Blackwood. But his sudden death had left his son, Sarah's father, vulnerable to those who saw opportunity in tragedy. Sarah opened the journal, though she knew its contents by heart. Her father's meticulous documentation of the systematic theft of their land, accomplished through forged documents and threats by men whose names were now honored in Copper Creek's short history, men like Elijah Turner's father. A knock at her door startled her. She hastily rewrapped the documents before answering. Jacob Reed stood on her doorstep, hat in hands. "Mr. Reed," Sarah said, surprised. "Is everything all right?" "May I come in? What I have to say isn't for public consumption." Sarah stepped aside. Reed entered, declining her offer of coffee. "I'll be direct. There's talk in town. Turner's been asking questions about you, about your past. He's convinced there's more to your story." A chill ran through Sarah. "What kind of questions? About where you came from? Why a woman with your education would choose Copper Creek? Why you keep to yourself?" Reed studied her reaction. "My daughter told me something while I was sitting with her. Said you talked during her labor to keep her mind off the pain. told her stories about your family. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She mentioned you spoke of your grandfather, Jonathan Blackwood. The name hung in the air between them like smoke. What exactly are you asking, Mr. Reed? I'm not asking anything, Reed replied. I'm telling you that I knew your grandfather. And I'm telling you that whatever brought you back to Copper Creek, whatever's in that satchel you guard, it has something to do with setting things right. Sarah stared at him, unable to respond. This gruff, solitary rancher had just articulated what she'd never dared speak aloud. Reed continued, his voice low. Turner's father was a land speculator with a reputation for creative acquisition. The Harper place was once the center of the Blackwood claim, wasn't it? Slowly, Sarah nodded. How long have you known? Suspected since you arrived. Confirmed it when Emma mentioned your grandfather's name. Reed set his hat on the table. I bought my land legally, Mrs. Blackwood, if your claim is valid. It is, Sarah interrupted, passion breaking through her composure. I have the original deed and my father's journal documenting everything. Reed nodded. Then why haven't you presented your case? It's been 3 years. The question cut to the heart of Sarah's dilemma, because it's not just about the land anymore. People have built lives here, families like the Harpers, who bought their homestead in good faith. Even the Turners. Elijah may suspect my motives, but his children are innocent of his father's actions. Understanding dawned in Reed's eyes. You came for justice but found complications. Exactly. Sarah moved to the window, looking out at the town. What would justice even look like now, forcing families from their homes? Reed was quiet for a long moment. I'm not a man who involves himself in other people's business, but I believe in debts being paid. You saved my daughter and grandson, so I'm offering information in return. What information? Turner's been corresponding with a private investigator from back east. Man arrived on yesterday's stage. I overheard them at the saloon. Turner's determined to prove you're not who you claim to be. The news settled like a stone in Sarah's stomach. There's more, Reed added. The Harper widow is selling. Can't manage the place since her husband died. Turner's looking to buy it. This was crucial. Martha Harper's homestead sat on what had once been the most valuable part of the Blackwood claim, the portion with water rights that controlled much of the surrounding land. Thank you for telling me this, Sarah said quietly. Reed retrieved his hat. Whatever you decide, you should know that Emma has asked if you would consider moving to the ranch. She'll need help with the baby, and the sleeping hour could use someone with your skills. It's an open offer. Before Sarah could respond, he was gone. That night, Sarah made her decision. The leather satchel, packed with essentials, including the hidden documents, sat ready by the door. By dawn, she would be gone from the cabin. What she didn't know was that across town, a man was recording observations in a notebook. His most recent entry read simply, Subject confirmed as Sarah Blackwood, daughter of William Blackwood, investigating connection to the disputed territorial claims of 1858. The sky was still dark when Sarah slipped out of her cabin, the leather satchel secure against her side. The livery stable was quiet, but old Sam Peterson was already awake. Heading out, Mrs. Blackwood? He asked, helping her secure her bag to the saddle. Yes, she replied simply. I may be gone for some time. Sam cleared his throat. Road to the territorial capital is treacherous. Might be safer to wait. Sarah met his gaze, understanding the warning. Thank you for your concern, but my business won't wait. Just thought you should know that Turner and that city fellow were asking about the same route yesterday. This was unexpected information. I appreciate the warning. Is there another way? Sam spoke in a low voice. Harper's Creek runs behind my property. Follow it west. It'll lead you to the old trading post. From there, you can pick up the stage road without passing through the canyon. Sarah nodded her thanks. The eastern horizon was just beginning to lighten. With luck, she would be well on her way before most of Copper Creek awoke. But luck was rarely on the side of a Blackwood. Going somewhere, Mrs. Blackwood. Elijah Turner stepped out from the shadows, the investigator at his side. Both men blocked the narrow path. Sarah straightened in her saddle. "Mr. Turner, you're up early." "As are you," Turner replied, his thin smile never reaching his eyes. "One might almost think you were running from something." "My business is my own." The investigator stepped forward, a slight man with spectacles. "Your business becomes the concern of others when it involves fraudulent claims to property." "I don't believe we've been introduced, sir." "Harmon Pierce, representing the Eastern Land and Development Company," the man replied with a slight bow. "We have significant investments in this territory, including recent acquisitions from the Turner family holdings." The pieces fell into place. This wasn't merely about Turner's suspicions. This was about money, specifically the value of land that would increase exponentially once the railroad came through. "I see," Sarah said, her mind racing. "And you believe I pose some threat to these investments?" Pierce adjusted his spectacles. "We have reason to believe you possess documents relating to the original Blackwood claim of 1858. Sam Peterson stepped forward. "Now hold on. Mrs. Blackwood has done nothing but help folks since she arrived. Delivered half the babies in town, tended the sick when Dr. Wilson was overwhelmed. Whatever you're accusing her of—" "Stay out of this, Sam," Turner snapped. "This is about who she really is and what she's really after." Sarah made a quick decision. These men had clearly been watching her. If she tried to flee now, it would only confirm their suspicions. "Very well," she said, dismounting. "If you have questions, I'm willing to answer them. But not in the street like a common criminal." They walked to the hotel dining room, a small crowd gathering to watch. Sheriff Miller was among them, his expression troubled. "Now," Pierce said, placing his notebook on the table, "let's discuss the Blackwood claim." Sarah took a sip of coffee. "What exactly would you like to know?" "Let's start with confirmation. You are Sarah Blackwood, daughter of William Blackwood, granddaughter of Jonathan Blackwood, who filed the original claim to this land in 1858. "I am. And you came to Copper Creek 3 years ago under the guise of a midwife, while your actual purpose was to investigate the disposition of your grandfather's property." "I came to Copper Creek because my skills were needed here. My purpose was to help people. Yet you carried documents relating to the Blackwood claim." Pierce pressed. "I carry my family history. Would you expect me to abandon it?" Turner leaned forward, his patience snapping. "Enough of this dance. We know what you're planning. You intend to file a claim that would invalidate every property deed in Copper Creek. Is that what you believe?" Sarah asked softly. "Indeed, that I came here to destroy the town." "What else are we to think?" Pierce interjected. "The Blackwood claim, if recognized, would encompass nearly 8,000 acres, including this entire settlement." Sarah looked between the two men. "You're right about one thing. My grandfather's claim was never properly invalidated. After his death, certain men, including Mr. Turner's father, took advantage of my father's youth. They forged documents, threatened witnesses, and forced my father to flee with nothing but the original deed and his journal documenting their crimes." Turner's face flushed with anger. "You're slandering a dead man." "I'm stating facts that can be proven," Sarah replied calmly. The door opened. Jacob Reed stood in the doorway, Sheriff Miller behind him. "Thought I might find you here," Reed said to Sarah. "Thomas rode in with news about Emma. She's asking for you." It was a transparent excuse, and everyone knew it. Reed was offering her an escape. Pierce stood. "Mr. Reed, we're in the middle of an important discussion regarding Mrs. Blackwood's true intentions toward this town." "Her identity." Reed's voice carried a dangerous edge. "She's the woman who saved my daughter and grandson. That's all the identity that matters to me." Sheriff Miller stepped forward. What exactly is happening here, Turner?" "She's planning to file a claim that would take away everyone's property." The sheriff looked at Sarah. "Is that true?" The moment of truth had arrived. She reached for her satchel and withdrew the oilskin package. "What I have here is evidence of crimes committed against my family 25 years ago. The original Blackwood deed, my father's journal, and testimonies I've gathered." She unwrapped the package. Yes, I came to Copper Creek to seek justice for my father, but I also came because I needed to understand what kind of place had grown on the foundation of that injustice." The room was silent as she continued. "What I found were hard-working people who purchased their land in good faith. Families like the Harpers, who struggled to make something from nothing." Sarah looked directly at Turner. "I also found that the primary beneficiaries of the theft were not the settlers, but men like your father, who sold the parcels at profit." She withdrew one final document, newer than the others. "This is a petition I was taking to the territorial capital. It doesn't seek to reclaim the land, but rather to establish a trust for the benefit of Copper Creek's residents." Sheriff Miller took the document. "You're asking the court to recognize the original theft, but to grant current residents their titles in exchange for what?" "In exchange for acknowledging the truth," Sarah said simply, "and for establishing a small portion of the land, the original Blackwood homestead where the Harper place now stands, as a community resource. A place for a proper school, perhaps, or a hospital." Reed laughed sharply. "So all this sneaking around, Turner, getting your eastern friend to investigate Mrs. Blackwood, was to protect land you've already sold to his company for the railroad." Turner's face reddened, but Pierce maintained his composure. "The Eastern Land and Development Company has made significant investments based on the legal status of these properties. Seems to me," Reed observed dryly, "that Mrs. Blackwood is offering everyone a way forward that honors both justice and mercy." The breakfast bell rang, startling everyone. The gathered townspeople who had been listening pushed into the dining room. Dr. Wilson was among them. "Is it true, Sarah, about the land?" Sarah nodded. "It's true, but I'm not here to take your homes. I just want the truth to be known, and a small measure of justice for my father's memory." Martha Harper pushed through the crowd. "The homestead you're talking about, it's my place, isn't it?" "Yes," Sarah admitted, "though I understand you're planning to sell." Martha nodded. "Can't manage it alone. Turner's offered to buy it, but I've been hearing things about that offer that don't sit right." Pierce cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harper, I can assure you that the Eastern Land and Development Company's offer is quite generous." "Generous for whom?" Reed interjected. "For Martha? Or for your company once the railroad cuts through her property?" The murmurs grew louder as the implications became clear. Turner had been acting as an agent for the Eastern Company, buying land at prices far below what it would be worth once the railroad came through. Sheriff Miller held up his hands. "Seems to me we have two separate issues here. Mrs. Blackwood's claim about the original ownership and the current transactions regarding the Harper property." He turned to Sarah. "Your petition. It doesn't seek to invalidate current ownership." "No," Sarah confirmed. "Only to establish the historical record and to create a trust for the Harper homestead, preventing it from being developed for private gain." Martha Harper stepped closer to Sarah. "Until all these years, you knew that place was rightfully yours, and you never said a word." "It wasn't a matter of right anymore," Sarah replied. "Too many innocent people would be hurt. I was seeking a different kind of justice." Martha studied her, then turned to face the room. "Well, I've made my decision. I'm not selling to Turner. I'm donating the Harper place to Mrs. Blackwood's trust, on the condition that I can live out my days in the house my husband built." Turner protested. "You can't do that. We have an agreement." "We have discussions, not an agreement," Martha corrected firmly. Reed stepped forward. "I think it's time we put this to the town council. Let Copper Creek decide how to proceed." Sheriff Miller nodded. "Seems fair." As the crowd dispersed, Sarah found herself standing beside Jacob Reed. "Your offer," she said quietly, "about staying at the ranch to help Emma, is it still open?" Reed's eyes, so often guarded, softened slightly. "It is, though I reckon you'll be busy with this trust of yours now." Sarah glanced at the documents on the table. "Perhaps I can do both." "Perhaps you can," Reed agreed, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. And Sleeping isn't far from the Harper place. As they walked out, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders, the burden of secrets finally released, the path ahead clearer than it had been in years.